Hello, friends. This video is the answer to a question: are narcissists all bad? We see a lot of material online, and a lot of it is really, negative about narcissists and narcissism. And yes, there's a lot of pain that happens, and it leads us to question, well, is every narcissist just like a terrible person all the way through and through? Um, I'll say no. Like, you wouldn't have fallen in love or become close to a narcissistic individual if they were just, a purebred sociopathic jerk, right? That doesn't happen. Like the narcissistic people I have known, and the one that I had loved was, there are beautiful qualities. There can be extreme acts of kindness and seeming empathy and care. Um, the thing is that it's like, what do they call it when you I'm having a brain fart here. Selective hearing. So it's like selective empathy, right? So um, these qualities do exist. They're just very selective in the moment. So they are extremely sensitive beings, and some people, especially if they have more of the vulnerable narcissistic traits, they can be like come across as deeply empathic. They do understand how they're making you feel, right? It's not like, but they have a hard time feeling what you feel, or like really caring for what you feel, um, in moments where it makes them look bad or feel bad about themselves. But yes, they can be super kind and generous and lovely and obviously charming, and a lot of fun to be around. And they can be doing really good work in the world. They can be very creative and passionate, and they can love you up in really beautiful ways and write you poetry and sing you songs and make you food. And so you can spend a lot of your time with a narcissistic person and feel very happy. But this is what gets confusing, is because the bad behavior um, is so very intense, and it's strange, and it's a little bit more insidious and hidden than what we're used to seeing as bad behavior. A lot of times it's not like outright abusive. It's very, what the term I like to use is slippery, where you're kind of like, wait, did he just, and you can't really tell if that was an insult. And then it gets to a point where you can definitely tell it's an insult, right? There's, rage fests, and then you'll have like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing that happens. Um, but that's the thing, is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like, you're dealing with two very opposing sides of personality. And another thing that can be really confusing about this is that you'll often see this person be extremely nice and kind to other people. So okay, so obviously, like, we know the stages of narcissism. If you're not familiar with it, the first stage is love bombing, and then once they've got you for a while, and they kind of start they get what they want from you, whether it's like money, uh, any sort of like, well, they call it narcissistic fuel, so money, confidence. If they've dated up, they've gotten a little bit more like clout in a community, or gotten certain things, needs met, then when they get what they want out of you, they'll start the devaluation phase. And so they'll devalue you as a human being, and it's discard, right? So the kind and sweet behavior that you see from a narcissist in the beginning, in the love bombing stage, is just, wow, so off the charts. Like, you'll probably experience a lot of overwhelm, and just like I've never felt so loved and seen and cherished. And if you're a person who's grown up with childhood wounds, and you haven't felt seen and you haven't felt cared for, this is how it gets in there, right? If you're feeling like, if you have your own self-esteem stuff coming up, a narcissist love bombing campaign can feel incredible. So watch out for that, right? Um, it'll get you. We don't want that. So, the way a narcissistic person will treat you during a love bombing phase and also intermittently throughout the relationship. So, it is an intermittent reinforcement. Like a narcissistic person can be super lovely to you, even like 75, 80% of the time. But there's still this like decent amount of time where the abuse is it's profound. And a really smart one will make the ratio just like they'll do it just enough to where you stick around, for as long as they want you, as long as they can use you for. Um, and I don't personally think all of this is intentional, that narcissists go out there and they're like, oh, I want to be a shitty person. There are a lot of wounds there. There's a lot of shame that the the narcissistic person internalized, and usually they authentically on the inside they just feel really bad about themselves, and so there's this split going on. And boyfriend's texting me. He's great. It's really great to be in an awesome relationship after all of this. I'm gonna save that for another video, but it's a really sweet moment. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, there's a lot of shame there, and so there's a split deep within, and a lot of self dishonesty. And so it's not like they're trying to be a bad person. They think they are a bad person at the core. And so subconsciously, when you think a certain way about yourself, these behaviors are going to slip through. And that's kind of what happens. It's like the motives for doing things are in alignment with this core belief that they're bad, right? um, and you know there's a lot of compassion that I personally feel for people who are afflicted with this. Like, it's hard, and I definitely walked the compassionate route during my experience, and tried to continue to offer forgiveness and compassion, and that harmed me more than it did good. And I'm going to also talk about that in another video, about forgiveness. But yeah, the thing is that there becomes a problem when it comes to accountability. Like, most narcissistic people can be lovely and friendly and wonderful and so much fun to be around, until they can even be supportive of you, right? Until something happens with them, where if you feel like they crossed your boundary, or if you feel harmed or hurt by something they said and you try to tell them about it, then things change very drastically. Saying I'm sorry and being held accountable is a narcissist's kryptonite. And at that point, that's when you really start to lose them, and that tends to be where they become abusive, and where you will see the Dr. Jekyll turn into Mr. Hyde. You'll get a whole new personality out of them. This intermittent reinforcement, this back and forth, will cause your brain to scramble and do the dopamine thing, right? Where you kind of start to obsess. You're trying so hard to get the previous, like, love bombing version of them back, because that was wonderful and that's who you thought they were. And yeah, what happens in that phase is you tend to probably try to placate more. You start to fawn more, and do more things for them to try to get that version of them back. And that can cause a lot of confusion and inner dizziness. So yeah, watch out for that. So yeah, like the answer to my question, are they all bad? Like, it starts to get a little tricky here, because they'll be nice and sweet to keep you around, and a part of them may actually still love you and care about you. It's just the way that the whole like the program the narcissistic program within the person's psyche is going to have that kindness aspect shut down. Um, and then, of course, when you get to the discard phase, like all that's gone. Like you won't find actual kindness. Like some of them can, like in my experience, I've experienced, platitudes that they can say things that sound really nice, but they won't actually like ask you how you're doing, or they might be, sending messages behind your back or doing the smear campaign thing. Or in the case, one of my friends who's going through a deep thing right now, like he's just mean, like jaw-droppingly cruel and mean, and you might experience that too. However, in his other relationship, I'm sure he's very nice. So the answer to my question is no, narcissists aren't all bad. Sometimes, you can be a really great like acquaintance or friend with them. They can bring a lot of real beauty into your life. I mean, like they can be really brilliant and offer a lot, and they tend to have like really beautiful souls as well. It's just if you get too close and too intimate, you run the risk of going through yeah, this very painful process, right? Of like getting really sucked into it's I would call it, it's like an inner machine or an inner virus that'll just chew you up and spit you out. So yeah. And again, like I don't personally believe that narcissistic people intend to or try to run this program, right? It's all wounding. Every single one of us has narcissistic tendencies. When I started really looking into this and looking at my own tendencies, what I found was they are coping mechanisms from childhood wounds. So when we're wounded in childhood and we believe certain things about ourselves, like a kid's mind is black and white thinking. It's like I'm bad, this is good, it's either this or that. And it's very similar in a narcissistic mindset. It's all black or white, all or nothing. And yeah, if we're wounded and very insecure in certain ways, then we will go about getting our needs met like a manipulative little child, that doesn't know better. And so oftentimes like narcissistic tendencies are basically um, spaces where our development was arrested, and we're acting in a very selfish and childish way. Another thing I'll say about that is that, childlike thinking is very black and white. There's no room for nuance. So a kid, if like a kid's left alone or abandoned, then that child's going to be like, oh, there must be something terribly wrong with me. Versus, being able to understand the nuances of what the parent's going through. Um, we just don't have that rationale when we're that young, and so oftentimes a part of our psyche is stuck there, and that narcissistic behavior is a continuation of that subconscious way of being. So yeah, it's not an intentional thing. There's a lot of wounding happening there, and it's okay to really love and care for a narcissistic person deeply. It's just you have to understand that you know there are, yeah, it's going to be really hard for that person to be able to treat you and hold you in a way that you need, or that is going to be beneficial to you and not harmful. And that's the rub, right? Like it's really easy to extract ourselves from a relationship with someone or not even get involved with them in the first place if they're just a complete entire asshole all the time through and through. Like you're not going to want to even get close to that. But when there's somebody who is also very lovely and has really incredible qualities at the same time, it's going to be a lot harder. So no, narcissists aren't all bad. They can just cause a lot of harm, depending on how closely involved you are with them. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff, and sometimes I even feel bad because it's like I don't want to paint anybody to be a terrible person. That's not what I'm doing. However, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors in these situations that it tends to get shut down. I tended to not speak about any of this because of worrying about blowback, and that could still happen. I wouldn't be surprised. But if everyone stays quiet about it, then no one will know what's happening if you're in it. And I think it's a pretty common thing. Fortunately, I've only had one relationship that was this intense. I've had a couple of friendships where a similar thing was at play, but yeah, only one romantic experience where this was like, pretty intense. And usually a lot of other people will see it, but a lot of other people won't. And it's just, yeah, it's confusing as shit. Okay. So thank you for listening in and watching this video. If you have any insights from it, feel free to drop a comment. But thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.